30 seconds. Hear you, Jesse.
So Jesse's talking to you?
Yeah, he sends me messages. "30 seconds. Hear you, Jesse."
So Jesse's talking to you?
Yeah, he sends me messages. Okay. Welcome to Could This Be Grace? My name is Alan Friesen. We are coming to you from the ancestral home of the Blackfoot people, the Blackfoot Nation. My guest, my co-host, is the lovely and talented Dr. Diane McConnell. She has authored a book called Could This Be Grace? And she's sharing with us. This is session 3 of 6 that she's sharing about the most important pieces of the book, in her opinion, the summary type thing. The book's still great to read, like excellent book, but these are kind of the key points that she wanted to share with you. How are you tonight, Diane?
Hey, my friend Alan, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
I'm good. I'm beaming in from Nordegg, Alberta, and it's a beautiful day here. Light falling snow. We went out for a walked through the forest, and it's great. Saw lots of deer.
Nice.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Excellent.
It's great to be here, and it's great to see you. I love spending time with you. Thanks for having me.
It's always enjoyable, and I always learn. You're amazingly resourceful and smart. It's just such a pleasure to hang out with you. So yes.
Aw, you're sweet. Anyway, so we should get started.
Sure, let's do it.
3. I can't believe we're session 3. Oh my gosh.
3. And Diane, we have even the technology working tonight. The slide
I think so.
Share screen's going to work and everything. My goodness.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen. There we go. You got it?
Got it. I can see it. Could This Be Grace? Part 3.
Could This Be Grace? Part 3. No, the other. So let me start, because over the previous 2 weeks, I began each session by giving an introduction to my family. And so I'm going to invite my family back here tonight, because for those that might be just joining us for the first time tonight, it helps a little bit of context around the discussion that we're having and the kind of the origin of the book.
And so Saffron is no longer walking up the side of the mountain. He's like upright with it.
And since I took this picture, he's probably grown about 4 more inches. I can't keep up with him. I can't keep the pictures current. But up in the top right corner, there's my dear sweet little daughter, Marin. And just below that, my 2 sons, Ben is standing, Eric's sitting in the chair going, yeah, that's right. We talked about Kefren, my grandson, in the middle. And there's my beloved Roy to the left. And I gave a little bit of background just really quickly. We were a family that, we are a family that loves the outdoors. Hence, we live in Nordegg in the forest. We spent lots of time doing all kinds of outdoor activities, running, biking, cross-country skiing, that kind of thing. And just at the time of Eric's birth, he was the eldest, we had applied to do a D&D exchange in Germany. Had all our papers submitted, and then on Eric's first birthday, we encountered kind of significant retinal issues, problems, and he started to have a series of surgeries, and so we had to pull back the papers. And that was kind of the start of the journey. So that was the next thing that I talked about over the last kind of 2 sessions, was the context and the journey. So we've got a family now with 3 children, 2 boys with pretty significant health issues. They were both premature. And as they were growing, they were encountering ongoing health challenges, anomalies of a variety of different kind of circumstance. So bone problems, liver problems, blood problems, seizures, and those were all happening intermittently. And sometimes there was crossover between the two boys, and other times they were separate. Sometimes it was so significant they were in ICUs. Thousands and thousands, I think I shared, thousands and thousands of hospital visits, and thereby thousands and thousands of interactions with healthcare professionals from kind of every area of expertise and specialty, including some rehab type services. Eric, the eldest on the right-hand side there, poor guy, ended up in an assisted care facility. And in his late 20s, he passed away while he was living there. And our youngest, Ben, frequenting the ICU. So that's Ben, just next to Eric there. He had respiratory challenges. He ended up on a ventilator, and he passed away in the ICU in 2019. So that's just
you would also your daughter, this must have been really challenging for her too, right? I mean, she's like, she's got her, the stress of you and Roy with trying to help the boys, but then she's really kind of, perhaps she's on the attention side of things. You just don't have the attention to share with her, with all of the time and attention and care you have to, to put into the boys, right? To help the boys, right? So that must have been a pretty challenging thing for her too. Would it have been?
I believe so. I mean, I know so now, and I was aware during the journey, but I wasn't attentive to it as maybe I should have been.
Well, how could you have been? How could you have been? Your hand was really full with like all of those challenges, to navigate that complicated a system with those extreme needs. Wow, that's like you have to be incredibly smart to be able to even understand the process, right? Even the medical professionals don't understand the process, how it works, right? So where you advocated once to kind of get them into the same facility at the same time, right? At the same level of care. Well, that would be an obvious thing, but that probably, you had to move mountains to make that happen, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I know now, I mean, I have a really close relationship with her now. And when we do talk about it, one of the things that she has articulated is that she felt a tremendous amount of pressure to be well. I have to be well. I have to be well. I have to, do my job. I have to be perfect.
Right.
And that's kind of had pretty significant implications in terms of her trying to sort that out as an adult and raising her own family now.
Sure.
One of the stories I'll share that I, to this day, really regret, but she was little. She was about maybe 7 or 8 years old, and we were in a bungalow, and her bedroom was in the basement, and Ben was really suffering with pain in his eyes. He had glaucoma, a lot of pressure, and we often didn't know what to do, but he was really difficult to get settled. And this one particular night, he was screaming and screaming and screaming, and I was pacing with him, and I was trying to settle him. And my husband and I were, should we call the doctor? Should we go to the hospital? What should we do? And so we were having this tension type of exchange between us. And she came walking up the stairs, and we saw her and said, "What?" And she said, "I have a tummy ache." And we got irritated with her and said, "A tummy ache? A tummy ache? Get back to bed." And because we were kind of in this crisis trauma, but that poor little thing was probably, it wasn't just the tummy ache. She was probably anxious, worried. I look back now and I feel shame attached to that as her mom, thinking that she didn't get the support or the connection that she probably should have. But that's probably the implications of adversity. That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then you look back on that stuff you have to work out, right?
Yeah, definitely so. definitely so. I'm just like, you can certainly see it, totally understandable, right? You have a child in pain screaming that you're trying to comfort, and another child, it's like triage, right? It's like this other child, yeah, just go back to bed. You're going to be fine, right? So
Yeah.
you can certainly see how that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard on the soul. Anyway, I mean, through the whole journey, which was quite long, I mean, 20 plus years. And as she grew as into a beautiful adult, we had time to do some things that really supported connection. Like her and I attended the ICANN conferences, the Louise Hay ICANN conferences. And we went every year. That was our special time. And we listened to these thought leaders like Wayne Dyer and Joe Dispenza and Marianne Richardson and Robert Holden, Sonia Choquette, all of those beautiful, beautiful leaders. And they had such powerful messages around connection to spirit and connection to soul and know thyself, and lots of those messages I've embedded into this book because I was learning them and looking at how they applied to me and how they applied to the kind of the practice of being a human being in the very best way that you can be. And so as I was learning those lessons, that's kind of the fuel and the seeds of this book. That's where I started, and that's what I wanted to do, because I felt like in the face of adversity, this really helped me. Maybe this can really help other people that face adversity. And interestingly enough, grace, I've been asked, where did that word grace come from? Could this be grace? And one of the very first thought leaders that I was attracted to and I learned from was from the Hubicks, and they are professors at a university in the States that founded a spiritual psychology master's course. And I love their book, Loyalty to the Soul. I have it right here.
Certainly do. I see it. Okay.
Yeah. And they, in their book, said, over the years, we've noticed that when an interdisturbance is resolved, someone's effectiveness in making a positive difference in the world actually improves. In fact, changes often occur around such a person that appears to have nothing to do with anything he or she has done outwardly. Some refer to this occurrence as coincidence, and we call it grace.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so when I read and I did some deep thinking about that, I was now really believing that everything that was happening with us, with me, was happening for a reason. And that reason was supposed to be there, is supposed to be positive. There's supposed to be contribution and learning, and that's grace. So if I look at my circumstance instead of looking at the dark, and I look at the light and I say, oh, could this be grace? Is this happening for a reason? And I'm supposed to be looking to the light and making contribution and being supportive. And I just think that's really cool. Don't you?
Definitely. I mean, so you have to make sense of it somehow. Like why did your boys have such horrendously poor health, right? Why did that happen? Why did you have all these challenges? So to frame it that there's a reason for it, and the reason for it, part of the reason for it is so that you could emerge with new capacities, new abilities to make a change in the world, right? That's what you're telling me, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm with you. That makes perfect sense.
Right. So last week, one of the first lessons that I talked about that I outline in the book is know thyself, and do that reflective work. Like, who really am I? What are my belief systems? What are those belief systems that influence the decisions and the behaviors that I engage in on a regular basis? And maybe think about the origin of them and where did they come from, and maybe challenge them, because they could be limiting. You could have made an agreement with the world to a belief system that is not really serving you or serving others. So the greatest limitations you'll ever face will be those that you might place on yourself. And I told stories about that last week to illustrate that.
And just to kind
right?
of like tag on to the comment here too, a lot of times, as you probably know this, well, I know you know this because you're more knowledgeable than I am, but the kiddos who experience trauma often at that point in their life create a belief that they're not worthy, they're not loved, there's something broken with them, or otherwise this caregiver could never hurt them or hurt them or beat them or in any way abuse them if they were lovable, right? But there's something wrong with them, and it's nothing wrong with them. Never was anything wrong with them, but that caregiver had challenges that they weren't ready to be a caregiver, basically, right? So
yeah, that's right. And I call that an agreement. So
yes,
when they were developing and growing, they experienced situations where they made an agreement that this must be truth.
yes,
So
exactly.
I'm not worthy, or I don't belong because of the experience and the evidence. That becomes their truth. And then
Yes,
what happens psychologically in their brain, because your brain doesn't want to be wrong, is that they're constantly looking for evidence to support that truth.
right,
So the
right.
story in their head, I'm not important, I don't matter, I don't belong. They're looking for all the evidence that continues to support that. And guess what? They miss all of the things that are counterintuitive to that.
Exactly. What they see are all the things that reinforce that
Yes,
belief. Oh, I made a mistake here. I'm no good. Oh, I forgot to call Sarah on her birthday. I'm no good, right? They glom onto the negative parts, never kind of acknowledging all of the things that they do well every day, all of the contributions they make, all of the times when they're kind and caring and considerate, right? They ignore
right,
those and focus on
right.
these things when they have been not perfect. And is there any human that's perfect, do you think, Dr. Mikado?
Well, no, I think that's like, no.
Does it
The,
exist?
the, per-
I
the,
go as far as to say we're perfectly imperfect. We got that
that's
much.
right. I mean, the perfection of the human being is to be human.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
perfect, right?
That's perfect. Yes.
Right. And I last week I talked about my own belief system around what it meant to be a good mom and a good teacher, and that I
Yes.
needed to know what to do, right? And
Yes.
every time I didn't know what to do, and we can't always know what to do, but every time I thought I needed to know what to do to be a good mom, and so I paid attention to all of the things that I didn't know what to do, and that reinforced, you're not a good mom, you're not a good mom. So I just was going in the wrong direction, trying to find the skills, the strategy, the knowledge to be good, and I was totally disregarding the most important thing, which was to be human and to be present for my own son and my students.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. No, that makes really good
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing too,
So
how about if there was times when you berated yourself because you didn't know what to do. Well, you didn't know what to do in a really challenging circumstance that very few people, if any, would know what to do, right? So it's just in those circumstances that we're
yeah,
all faced at some point. How about we say, hey, I need some help. Can you guide me? Can you help me? Can you listen to me? Right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
there's other human beings who want to help us
yeah.
along our journey, right?
And can you just be present with me? And I think
Yes.
we talked about this last week too, which was really exciting to me. I shared the story when my girlfriend came to my office one day. Both boys were in the ICUs, and I had been up all night. And now I'm at work, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, Diane," she said, "I don't know what to do for you." And I said, "You know what? You don't have to do anything, but it's amazing that you're standing here in the presence of me, just holding this space for me. That's really important because it's so isolating when you have those experiences."
You
So
bet.
I really kind of caught on to being versus doing.
Yes, yes, yes. Just her presence there was
Yeah,
very helpful for you, right? Very encouraging, supportive for you, right? So, yeah, yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
So what we're talking about here on the slide is the limiting beliefs. Here's 10 examples that impact. I'm too old to do that. I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated. So all of these are really beliefs that people hold that they silently don't recognize or articulate as I believe this, but they have this intuitive knowing of, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not capable. Me, I don't know what to do.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so what you're looking for always is the evidence, the evidence, the evidence, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
You'll find evidence that supports it, but you'll totally miss the evidence that's counterintuitive to these beliefs.
Yep. Yep. Makes good sense.
Yeah. So that was last week's lesson. This week's lesson that I learned is knowing the other. And I think we said, all right, I was saying that understanding your belief system is important work, and equally important is knowing the other. And I really, really learned this with my own son, because I didn't see him. When I was really knowing myself at that time with a belief system as I need to know what to do, I'm concentrating on myself and paying attention to, I need to go back to school, I need to get these skills, so I'm focused on me, and I totally was not focused on him. And that is really damaging, because the message that you're giving that he would be experiencing is that I don't see him and he doesn't matter and I'm not noticing. So really important is to avoid that situation and create a scenario where you create an experience for the individual where they really feel seen. And I call the space between you is compassionate space, where two individuals come together and they are allowed to be in the presence of one another, and they really get to connect and they really get to see one another for who they are. There's a backstory. I mean, we all have experiences. We bring those experiences into a relationship and into a connected experience. And so we have to be really cognizant of that and look for that. And I learned that when I did my doctoral research, because I was on this quest to find the right skills, the right strategy, and I couldn't find it. And what I was looking for is, there are successful blind adults out there. My son was blind, and I want him to be successful, and I want him to be viewed just like everybody else, just like a sighted person. And so there has to be an education when he's going to school, all the right program or strategies to teach him to show up that way. And so I was chasing that dream. And when I got to my doctoral dissertation, I thought, well, I can't find it. So I'm going to locate really successful blind adults, and I'm going to ask them about their school experiences and see if I can discover this golden nugget that I'm looking for. And so when I interviewed them, what I found was life-changing for me, because none of them talked about a strategy or a program or a resource that they had. Every single one of them talked about an experience with one adult that significantly influenced and impacted them and left the message, you're important, I see you, I believe in you, you have a contribution to make. And I went, holy smoly, know the other. Mm-hmm. And at that moment in time, I realized blindness creates a differentness in the world that I didn't understand. And so my message here is be curious. Be curious about that. So I turned around and I looked at my son, Ben, that was blind. And I said, well, what's it like to be a blind individual? Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Sure. And what are the things that are important to you? What are the things that make you happy? What are the things that you look forward to? And in turn, be curious about me as a sighted person, because my experience is completely different. And in that minute, we connected. Mm-hmm. And I became very close to him, and my whole world changed. Right. So it was really about slowing down and taking the time to say, why is this individual showing up the way they're showing up? What has happened to them? Be curious. What's been their experience? What's created these beliefs, or what's created this behavior, or what's bothering them?
One thing I just want to comment on, and you can correct me if you don't think I'm following along, when you were saying that you were focusing on you focusing on you to get the skills you felt you needed to know to help your sons, right? So it wasn't, it's not, woe is me, I'm going to look after myself. It was, I'm going to know what I need to know to give these boys the best possible experience they could get. That's what I hear you. right? But
Absolutely.
that came at kind of the cost of not being there with that was with Ben. Is that correct? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
with
Ben.
Ben. So that's one thing. But the second thing, your research, where one caring adult in that person's life made all the difference for them going forward, right? So
That's correct.
what does that say to you or me? Do we have a difference that we can make in other people's life by
Yes.
interacting with other people? Hell yeah, right? We can, with other people can be huge contributors to a good life for us, and we can be huge contributors to them, right? So
1,000,000%.
yeah.
You bang on.
Yes.
So when I started paying attention to Ben, for example, I'm picking on Ben, but when I started to pay attention and embrace and see and help him create a strong identity for himself, guess what happened? He wanted to travel, so off he went traveling. He went to university in Carleton. He went to Scotland. He went to conferences in the United States. He went to law school in Victoria. There's a picture on the right. He graduated with law. He did his articles. In this picture, he's been called to the bar. And there were two judges there in the blue and the red. Those are both judges that they said, I want to do it. I want to do it. So they both said, okay, we'll do it together. In his ceremony to call him to the bar, they shared it because they thought it was so remarkable that we have this blind student that has done so extremely well.
Nice.
The other story I want to share is that when that started to happen for Ben, I used to take him with me to classrooms to talk with students that had a visually impaired blind student in their class. And he would say, this is what it means to be a visually impaired blind student. I'm just more like you than I'm different. These are the things that are a little bit different for me because of my blindness. This is how you can help me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, one session was particularly good. And after the session, he said, Mom, that was so great. He said, I think the Prime Minister needs to know who I am. And I said, really? Really? And he said, yes. And so he wrote him a letter and he introduced himself. This was Prime Minister Chrétien at the time. And he said, so if you're ever in Edmonton, you should look me up. And lo and behold, Prime Minister Chrétien's office called our home on a Sunday to say that he was visiting Edmonton and he would like to meet Ben. My husband was on the call and he went, yes, right. What friend is playing a joke on us? And he said, fine, I'll believe it. And hung up the phone, and we phoned the RCMP division and said, we know Prime Minister Chrétien's coming to town. By chance, is Ben McConnell on his itinerary? And they replied, yes, he is. And off we went, and we had this beautiful meeting with Prime Minister Chrétien. There's Ben and his grandma, because grandma had to come along on the visit. And it's a pretty incredible story for us.
Nice.
And after the meeting, I said to Ben, you have no idea what just happened to you here. And he said, Mr. Chrétien wanted to meet me. And I said, yeah, it's Prime Minister Chrétien. Anyway, I said, you should write him a thank you letter and express gratitude for him taking this time. And he said to me, well, he said, actually, wasn't he the one that wanted to meet me? Shouldn't he be writing me a thank you letter? Anyway.
Oh, that's sassy. My goodness. Yeah.
Yes, but here's the great story. About a week later, we got a thank you letter from Prime Minister Chrétien for the visit. And guess what? It was in Braille.
Ah, really? Wow. That's a class act right there. That's amazing.
Class act. Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
So my message is, when you're thinking about that compassionate space and you're interacting with other people, ask yourself the question, what's the experience that this individual is having in the presence of me? It's nice. What you do, not what you do. It's critically important, and how you be in that relationship.
That's beautiful.
And so that's know the other, know thyself. And next week, my experience with adversity.
Woohoo! That's great. So beautifully done. That was excellent. Would you agree with this? Would you say that, because I've kind of framed this in my mind, that when I have a conversation with my friend Diane, I expect that it's going to be life affirming, and that we're going to leave that conversation and we're going to feel more hope, more joy, more gratitude, more love, more peace. I think that happens when you and I chat. I think you can probably do that every time you have a conversation with somebody. What do you think?
I certainly feel it when I have a conversation with you.
So what we're saying, as opposed to just having a transaction, every time you have a transaction, every time you have an interaction with somebody, you can make it something special. You can make it where they have a smile, where you leave and they feel good about you coming into their world, you being with them for that little bit of time. I think everybody, whether it's the barista at Starbucks or it's the guy who's pumping gas at the gas station or the clerk at the Save-On or whatever it is, I think you can make that a special type of a thing. So, yes. Yeah.
So the summary message is, do you see them?
Do you see them?
Do they feel seen by you?
Yes.
Right? Yes. Because if they do, then it's going to be hopeful. It's going to be rewarding. It's going to feel connection. That
is beautiful. Okay, Dr. McConnell, next week we'll resume with my experience with adversity. All right, looking forward to it.